Hey YouTube, what we got here is a small little Delta 1-inch belt sander. It is a quarter horse motor. The way that I came across this is my father-in-law found this by the side of the road in his neighborhood, and it's now sort of made its way over to me. It will run for a little bit, but then it just starts screaming like a banshee, and I think one of the bearings is probably gone bad. I think that the motor runs okay, but we'll have to see how this thing goes. We'll get inside of it, which is removing this thing here, and then we'll clean it up a little bit, and then we'll run it and see if it makes some noise. We'll try lubing some things up. Everything on it basically turns okay. The tracking may be a little off on it, but we'll kind of see from there. So let's go ahead and give this thing its initial run. So as you guys saw there was a ton of dust coming out. The inside of this thing is filthy. I did want to just show you that thing running. We'll see how it does once we crack it open and just sort of blow stuff out. We'll run it again and see if it makes that same noise. All right, let's go ahead and we'll crack this thing open. These are relatively sort of cheap, simple little tools. And that just pops off. It's got a couple of little tabs that go down in here, but you can see how dirty it is on the inside. And to go ahead and loosen the belt, you can just, let's see, you can push this thing forward, and that puts this wheel, that will let that thing go forward, and then you can just pop the belt off that way. Let's go ahead and take the air hose and we'll hose it out. So now we've got it blown out just a little bit, and what we'll do is we'll go ahead and plug it back in, get it turned on, and we'll see just if maybe that main bearing is down here. If we don't hear any sound, we're gonna know that it's not that. So let's go ahead and turn this thing on. So by that, what it tells us is there's probably something wrong with the bearing that is in here. Either maybe it needs to be oiled, or maybe it needs to be replaced. Again, this thing cost me $0, so if it turns out that it's too expensive to repair, I'll just maybe junk it, maybe keep some of the parts, that type of thing. I don't know what I'll do. So if we look at the order of how that thing would go on, basically like that. So in order to get this thing off and to access some of the screws, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and unbolt this base plate here, and then that will allow us to take this stuff off. What I think I'm going to do is take the air hose and blow that stuff out, so I'll cut you back on here. So I think you can see down in here, you've got another screw, you've got a couple of screws probably back in here where this thing is attached. And in order for me to get this part off, I think I'm going to have to unscrew that here. So we've got the capacitor here, and that's held on with this little bracket. And then what we'll do is we'll pull that thing out of there. We've got the ground wire that goes here. So of course, as you can see, there's tons of more sawdust and stuff in here. If we look around on this side here, there is like a little Allen head or a set screw that's in there. We'll have to take that out, and that way that'll let us pop this thing off. So I removed these here. I had to spray a little WD-40, but I got these out. That removed that from here. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these, there's 4 of them, take these off, and that will allow me to get in here and kind of look at the motor and look at the windings and everything and make sure that it's okay. So I had come down and sort of taken the field coil apart a little bit. There is a bearing that rides here, and then also on this end here where this part goes through, there's a bearing that rides here, and that is what allows that to turn inside of here. They were both kind of sticky. Okay, after kind of really ripping this thing all to pieces, I think I found what the problem is. It has, there's a bearing that basically rides here, and then there's another one that rides down on here. And if you look here, you can see that there's sort of a shelf where those bearings will kind of go and seat up against. One bearing is basically just pressed on down to here. This other bearing is housed inside of the cap on the motor. So I was able to just take a punch and kind of come through this way and get that off. The one that was in here would hardly move at all. I tried to put a little bit of oil in it. It kind of helped it a little bit. I finally got some some brake cleaner, and then I also used a little bit of carb cleaner just to kind of get it in there. And so now what happens is that they spin really well. So what I'll do, I don't know if you'll be able to hear it. So what I'll probably do now, and I don't know if it's the right thing to do, I don't think it can hurt, is I put some Gibbs penetrating oil in there, and I'm going to have that be the lubricant. And then what I'll do as well is I'll maybe put a little bit of oil in there and kind of spin them around just to give it something to kind of mesh up against. I think what had happened is over time, so much sawdust had kind of got in there and packed in, and it sort of dried everything out and gummed everything up. So I'm going to go ahead and put everything back together. I don't think I'm going to film it because it's going to be a little too hard. I'll see though. Everything else seems to work okay. I'm not 100% sure on these. I've kind of gone in and put some oil in on these to see maybe if that will do anything. And also, before I put all this back together, I'll come in here and kind of clean everything out and get everything to where it's as clean as I can make it. Let me show you real quick that Gibbs oil. So this is basically what I use. I'm sure it's a penetrant, a lubricant, corrosion inhibitor, water repellent. So, and this stuff is supposed to be pretty good. I think it's probably similar to something like a ballistol. So in order to get the brace sort of back in, I obviously am not strong enough to, you can't press it in. So I will go ahead and just take a socket that matches the outside diameter. I don't want it to be on the inside or it'll destroy the bearing. So what we'll do is we'll use this, and that will be able, should allow me to be able to go ahead and push this thing back in. So in looking at this, what we see is that this bearing will go down and be housed in there, and on this little ledge right there and there is once this is seated is what allows those right on. So hopefully this will solve that squealing problem. I think maybe they just needed to be kind of cleaned up a little bit. So we'll do the same thing where I'll hammer that back in. Okay, so I've got this case kind of banged back together a little bit. And what we'll do is, everything's wired, the switches are all wired back up again. So we'll go ahead and give it a test spin. We'll see if we hear that high-pitched whining and screaming. So fingers crossed. So I think that may have fixed the problem. Again, I think maybe those bearings just over time needed to be lubricated and kind of cleaned out a little bit. Who knows how old this thing is. Like I said, we got this thing off the side of the road type deal. So I got a little bit of a bucket of soapy water, and I'm going to go over some of these parts and get some of the things off. It's not a super detailed cleaning, but we'll get most of this stuff off and just give it the cleanest shot we can get, especially with some of this stuff here. I may go ahead and take some of this stuff apart and break it down even further. I don't know. I'll probably do it maybe just to give this thing the best possible chance and have it be as clean as possible. All right, I'll cut you back on after I'm done cleaning. So I've reassembled this stuff and kind of oiled and greased these bearings here. I wish this one spun a little bit better, but I think it's all right. Went in and just, like I said, I'm not trying to do 100% clean on it, but just basically get it clean enough. So we washed everything, and I hosed all this stuff off with brake cleaner and some other stuff, and then I put a little bit of oil on the bearings. So I've got to go ahead and put a few things back on, and then I'll cut you back on when that's in. It's just going to be kind of boring reassembly stuff. So I got these 3 bolts. They'll go in here, and then we'll put this guy back on here. So we're going to put our fence back on. What we need to do, put our bolt back in here. This goes through here like that. And you can sort of maybe see under here. Got your washer. That goes on. Like that. You got this piece. That threads on here. And we've got this guy that will go on here with this guy. That threads in. So what let's do before we button it up and actually put the belt on, let's go ahead and turn this on and just see how it runs differently from before. So we'll see if we hear that real high-pitched whine. So all in all, we've got that part fixed. Let's go ahead and put the belt back on and we'll run the whole thing and see how it does. So now we've got the belt back on. One thing I will show you guys, you can push this forward, and when you push this forward, it releases tension here, and that will take the belt on and off easier. So we've got it lined up pretty good. Everything seems to be in place. We still have enough tension, so we'll go ahead and turn it on and see what it does. So I think we've got a success, and I think we've fixed it. The final step will be to just place the cover back on, which you've got the tabs here and here, which fit down here and here, and they just sort of pop in. You've got your dust collection here. And then over here we have our screw and washer that go in and hold that on. And it's a little dirty, so we'll just give it a little bit of a scrape down here. Clean some of that stuff off. And give it a little bit of a wipe. And so we are done. One interesting thing that I did want to show you guys, and I don't know if you'll really be able to see it, but down in through here, let's so that we see that down in here, if you can see it, it is threaded. So you can, I think you can eventually put a disc on there.